This video is about the lack of camera movement in Yorgos Lanthimos' film The Lobster. I'll make comparisons to 4 other films throughout the video: Manhattan, The Graduate, Frances Ha, and Hot Fuzz. In The Lobster, the use of very little camera movement and the large amount of completely static shots allows other cinematic components to attract more attention. Such components are dialogue, silence, movement of things within the frame, and facial expressions. These start to stand out in an unpolished way, which adds an awkward kind of comedy to the film, with the main character in the spotlight. Let's first compare The Lobster's static shots to the camera movement in Hot Fuzz. In many scenes, it's the exact opposite. In other words, lots of dramatic camera movements to achieve a less subtle kind of comedy. However, in some scenes, he uses stasis of the camera to emphasize a funny dialogue or situation, just like in The Lobster. The difference is that in Hot Fuzz, such a static shot is funny because it stands out from the rest of the film's striking camera movement, whilst in The Lobster, the comedy is stretched out because of the overall lack of camera movement. Using a static shot for a scene with dialogue creates a full focus on what is being said and on the silences in between the lines. For example, this scene consists almost entirely of one single static shot of David listening to someone and responding to her in carefully chosen words. The camera doesn't zoom in or out to tell us something about David's emotions, and it doesn't move to show us who's sitting opposite him. The way we experience the main character isn't altered by the cinematic effects of camera movements. He is portrayed in such a minimalistic way that it feels strange watching him like this. We're used to the camera guiding us where and how to look, and David's character becomes awkwardly funny when this doesn't happen. The same goes for other scenes in the film with dialogue, like when a girl tells David several ways to remove the bloodstain her nosebleed caused on his shirt whilst dancing, and this scene where a woman tells David about biscuits, blowjobs, and planning her suicide, all in one conversation and all shown to us in one single static shot, adding comedy to the weird situation and David's awkward silences. Woody Allen also uses static shots quite often during dialogue to enhance comedy, for example in this scene in Manhattan, where his character explains that he doesn't inhale when he smokes, he just lights a cigarette because he thinks he looks handsome with it. Imagine this scene with camera movement, for example a zoom like this. It instantly makes the scene less funny because it completely neglects Manhattan's naturalistic approach to comedy. The same goes for many dialogue scenes in Frances Ha by Greta Gerwig, for example this very awkwardly comedic breakup scene, and The Graduate, whose main character Ben, played by Dustin Hoffman, can be called the epitome of awkwardness. Every static shot of a dialogue scene is funny because the stasis puts all the emphasis on Ben's restless state of mind. The Lobster also uses static shots to accentuate movement within the frame. For example, this clumsy fight scene and these dancing scenes can be compared to similar bits in Frances Ha. If the camera would move during these scenes, it wouldn't be as comedic, they'd just be shots of people dancing or moving rapidly. That there's an overload of movement just from what's happening in front of the camera is what makes the stasis of the camera eye stand out. Being the only one not moving makes you feel alienated, which is what makes the spectacle comedic. Lastly, I want to look at this final scene of The Lobster, where David and the short-sighted woman sit across from each other in complete silence. Dramatically, you could compare this to the final scene in The Graduate, because in both of these static shots, we watch the characters' realization about how they determined their fate and they only have each other. Comedically though, it's better to compare the shot from The Lobster to this shot from The Graduate, which takes place early on in the film. The similarity is that in both shots, there's lots of movement going on in the frame, cars in the background in The Lobster, and the sea of people coming through the door in The Graduate. However, the focus is on the main characters. They don't really know how to behave in the situation they're in, which results in them being silent.